Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Zach Quick. Thanks for being on the show, Zach.
Thank you for having me, Whitney. I'm a big fan of the show and happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful to have you on. Appreciate you being a listener as well. And a little about Zach. He's a Christian, a husband, a father, and self-storage owner located in Northwest Arkansas. Zach and his wife built up a residential portfolio of 28 units before feeling compelled to 100% pivot into self-storage. They have since sold all of their residential portfolio and own and operate 7 storage facilities consisting of over 300,000 square feet in the Midwest. Zach, thank you again for your time being on the show. I'm looking forward to getting into this story. I think there's a lot of listeners that are going to be able to relate to what you have done, or maybe they're in that moment, trying to think about, should they make that pivot? Should they take that leap? It's a big step. It's encouraging. Your wife's involved as well. And I'm sure there's listeners that can relate to that. Give us a little more about who you are, and let's dive into your story a little bit so you can help the listeners.
Sure. And thank you again. I had always known, in college that I wanted to be involved in investing or small business ownership or some way, shape, or form. And so out of college, did the stock market thing for a while, and then saved up enough money that my wife and we wanted to buy a house hack. That was kind of our entry point, so to speak. But we were moving for a job at the time, and it was kind of a tight timeline. And so a duplex didn't really work out, but we found a garage apartment. And it kind of just checked all the boxes, worked really well. And that was kind of our entry into it. And we ended up basically from that point over the next 2 to 3 years, just kind of full-fledged going into residential, small houses up to a small 12-unit apartment. To where we had 28 units, and kind of that 12 unit was the last one. Got it rehabbed, filled up, and kind of just felt stuck. Partially because we were somewhat out of money, and then twofold, didn't really, and some of it was some limiting beliefs, which we can touch on, but just kind of couldn't really figure out what was next. I think in my mind, I thought, well, we'll sell this 12 unit and kind of move into, maybe a 30 unit or and whatnot. And so anyways, I was on a family vacation, and my dad was driving actually, and I looked out the window and there were these bright blue self-storage doors. And I'd never really looked at self-storage in any way, shape, or form. And I literally feel like God was saying, hey, why don't you look into this a little bit more? And so that's what we did. Just did a lot of research, started kind of filling out what we were looking for, listening to anything that we could look at, and reading anything that we could get our hands on. And eventually, once we sold that 12 unit, we actually 1031'd into a storage property. And that was August of 2018. And so that was our first one. And then fast forward to now, we own and operate 7 storage facilities in Missouri and Arkansas, and we've sold all of our residential stuff. So, storage kind of spoke to me and us. And I don't say that to come on here and just, say storage is better than anything else or anything like that. I think it's just more of kind of finding your niche, and how you can really lean into that and kind of, put some wind behind your sails, so to speak. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
No, that's awesome. I just appreciate you sharing about just your path, because I think it's the way many people get to in the syndication business or get into commercial real estate. They start with single family or duplexes or those things. Even house hacking, it's interesting, just your all's desire to get into the business and doing whatever it takes, even finding a garage apartment that that worked for you all to make that happen. And then starting with some single family up to a 12 unit, I think you said, but feeling stuck. Let's talk about that a minute. You felt stuck. Out of money, and probably trying to figure out, well, how are we going to buy the next deal? Can you just talk about that a little bit, the thoughts there and how you did get to the next level. What was the breaking point that helped you to make it happen, to move past that or to pivot from single family then, if that was the time that happened?
Sure. And yeah, so a couple of things, and I kind of touched on those limiting beliefs at the time is, so that 28 units was all just my wife and I. She was a teacher. I had a decent W-2 jobs, and we were good savers, and basically we're just plowing anything and everything we could to keep growing. But again, obviously, you kind of run out of your own money at a certain point, and so a couple shifts in that. After we had bought our first storage facility, commercial real estate is not cheap. That we wanted to keep growing, and in order to do that, you have to be open to partners, whether that be strategic partners, financial partners, all of the above. And so that's one of the ways that have obviously helped us grow. Is someone who wants to be involved but may not have the time or skill set to do so, but maybe have some money lying around to do so. But so that it was a big part of it, and also just not limiting ourselves. I think that I had this idea of it being such a linear process. I kind of mentioned selling that 12 unit, and then that will naturally go into like a 20 or 30 unit or something along those lines. Where even then, there were times where like maybe a deal would be slightly bigger than I was comfortable with, and I would just kind of turn away from it. Whereas now, I've come to realize, and obviously, it's an ongoing process too. But now, if a deal is bigger than me, so to speak, like that doesn't mean anything. There's plenty of pieces of the pie to go around, so to speak, and that doesn't mean that there are other people that wouldn't be willing to help you do those things. So hopefully that answers, I guess, partially some of the beliefs that we were stuck on.
For sure. No doubt about it. I think all of us have limiting beliefs all the time, but especially in the beginning, you just cannot see yourself doing something bigger than that single family home or that duplex. It's really hard to get past that for me. And I even had people that I trusted who were amazing entrepreneurs, that would say, wait a minute, Whitney, most people start with, more single family homes, that most people don't typically, jump into the syndication business that fast and without, years of single family experience or things like that. Did you receive, advice like that and have to kind of say, say somehow, well, thank you, but this is what we're doing and still make it happen?
Yeah. And just a lot of, I don't know, kind of explaining the thought process, because on the surface, and I say this very blessed that at 28 units, that's more than a lot of people will do, but we just desired for more and thought that we were capable of more. And so kind of just explaining that, basically we're going to try and start over, or start in in a new area that we really didn't know a ton about, in order to try and reach an end goal that we could get there. So yes, not luckily we try and surround ourselves with supportive people, but definitely you still have to kind of find yourself explaining why you're doing what looks like a negative step, or you're setting yourself up to fall on your face kind of thing as well. So
can you speak to just working together as a team with your spouse? I know there's a lot of people who are maybe trying to get their spouse on board or trying to figure out, how they can work together in this business. The audience knows that, like my wife has just been just amazingly supportive, just through this entire process. Could not have done it without her. She's not passionate about real estate. However, she is passionate about supporting me and our mission, our why, all those things that she is very passionate about. And so it couldn't have done it without her. That's for sure. Can you just speak to what that looked like as far as you all doing this together, and how that worked for you all?
Yes. And I echo so much about my wife, what you just said about yours, in that, I'm very lucky that, she was willing to, we didn't have the nicest cars or the nicest houses that we could afford. And honestly, right now we're living in a rental right now because we decided we wanted to move to a new area. And all that requires basically buy-in from your spouse to do those kinds of things. And so I'm very lucky that she had the diligence and the foresight to see what we were building towards. A lot of communication, which I was terrible at the beginning. It was kind of a like, hey, I'm going to do this, and hey, wife, you're coming along, which is not a path that I would recommend in any way, shape, or form. So, but I think now that with a lot of open communication and praying, and that essentially we're on the same page now. I mean, neither of us are in a W-2 anymore. So she was a teacher up until this school year. And then now she handles a lot of the bookkeeping, and then also kind of just keeping me in check. I like to go, but I think that having someone that is a little bit more of a rational voice at times to bounce ideas off of, and not to shoot me down, but to at least help me arrive at a better conclusion, so to speak. So a lot of trial and error, but just ultimately knowing that we do these things to hopefully at the end of it, like, look back on a lot of things, like with our spouses, and say, look at this life that we built together. And so that's something that I'm really proud of her and us of where we're at now, and just continue to work at too.
When did you know that it was time for not only you, but you and her to leave your JOBs, your positions?
Yeah. So sure. So it's funny, for at least the handful of years, I had always told her, like, if you feel called to, like, that you didn't want to teach anymore, that you wanted to stay home with our daughter, or like, you can do that. And so I actually ended up leaving my job before her, to kind of focus on storage more solely. And so I left in June of last year, and then she, I guess, officially left in end of last summer. Sorry, the dates are kind of weird with COVID cutting. I guess she officially left this past summer, but they didn't really teach past March. But anyway, so it got to a point that I just felt we felt comfortable enough that the trajectory, and that we'd picked up enough momentum that frankly we were going to figure it out. And a lot of praying, and then also figuring out that, like, on some level, like, if we fall on our face, like, we felt confident that we could get other jobs, and that we would find a way to scrape and make it work. So yeah.
Eventually you have to do it, right?
Yep.
Eventually you just have to rip that Band-Aid off, really, and know that you're going to make it happen. There's not an option to fail, right?
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I would have passed on a deal or two that, if I still had my job, that have reaped benefits for us, just because there wasn't that same sense of urgency, or at least it felt like the same sense of urgency. And I don't mean like, an acquisition fee or anything like that, because we weren't syndicating. But just that, like, this is a good deal, like, you need to do it. Whereas, like, you're still comfortable with your job. So you necessarily don't have to do it, kind of thing.
So why self-storage over multifamily or any other asset class?
Yeah. So I think, for me, probably one of the biggest things is I felt, and again, this was kind of where we were at the time, that self-storage felt a little bit more like a business to me, in that there's a lot more moving parts daily that I kind of wanted to be more involved. Whereas, and again, I'm simplifying, but with an apartment, a lot of it, you get them filled up, and somewhat you're just hoping that they stay there for a year and that it's not trashed. Again, I'm simplifying, but there's a lot more levers that you can pull with rental increases, administration fees, insurance, selling boxes and locks. To me, there was just a lot more moving parts with storage, and I think that kind of just helped with some of the business background that I had, and just wanting to be more involved in the day-to-day, so to speak. So,
Zach, what's been the hardest part of this process, or for you to get to, commercial real estate and be successful?
Hardest part. I'll just go back to those limiting beliefs. I think that, and I'm not sitting here as someone that has like conquered that beast, because we all still have those voices in the back of our heads that said like, well, yeah, he can do this because he has more money, or he has this partner or this partner. Like, you just have to be able to basically shut that out and determine that you're going to do something. So I would say kind of going over that hump, but it's still a continual process to get you to where you want to go.
How do you prepare for a potential downturn?
One of the things that I like about self-storage is it even throughout this coronavirus in the last, I don't know, however many months it's been now, I guess 7-8 months, but storage kind of has some resiliency in recessions, as well as that, when people are downsizing, kids lose their jobs, need to go back with mom and dad. They don't necessarily want to get rid of all their stuff because they're hoping to move out again on their own. So downsizing, and a lot of businesses now more use self-storage as it's cheaper than going out and getting a full-on warehouse lease. Storage is typically month to month, so there's a lot of flexibility there as well too. And then the sad part is too, when there's just like life events like deaths and divorces, often lead to people having stuff that they're not exactly sure what they're going to do with as well. So in good times, people end up buying more stuff like boats and RVs and honestly stuff that they may or may not need. But then in the bad times too, there is kind of this need to, maybe you have some family heirlooms or things like that you want to store. So
what do you predict to happen over the next 6 to 12 months in the real estate market?
Oh man. I don't see rates going anywhere. And so I can't help but think that that it's still just going to be extremely competitive. I think maybe more people are seeing that the stock market is harder and harder to truly, justify basing your whole retirement on. So I still think there's just going to be more and more of a flocking to commercial real estate. So with that, who knows, but I don't see this big inflation in prices. I still see cap rates staying pretty low, and honestly, just with shows like yourself and getting syndication out there more, I think more and more people are just accustomed to the idea of putting $50,000 into a syndication instead of it just sitting in their checking account or putting it into some stocks. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure that I will be wrong on many or all levels of that.
Well, that's one thing's for sure, that we'll all be wrong on some part of what we
Yes.
predict, right?
Yes.
I believe, Zach, anyone that's successful in business, and especially real estate, has a high level of self-discipline. How have you gained such a high level of self-discipline?
I think that how is a good question. I think that I'm fairly ambitious, and so just making sure that I can channel those things into good things. So I get up at 4:30, try and work out, read my Bible, and then kind of just spend some me time on what do I want to accomplish that day. How can I help with my family? How can I help with the business? So I think those kind of help me get the day started on a good note. So.
Nice. No, I appreciate you elaborating there a little bit as well. Just some of those daily habits have helped me tremendously. But it wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
So what's a way that you've recently improved your business that we could apply to our business?
I think just literally trying to think of my business as a bigger business, even if it's not there yet, of thinking like, okay, Zach's business in 5 years, will he appreciate this decision on, and even if that's, literally thinking like a franchise, so to speak, on certain things. So this is a minute detail, but with keypads in self-storage that, you use a keypad to get in, it would be cheaper to not have the same keypad at each facility. But when it comes to training new people, it's a heck of a lot easier to just say, this is the keypad that we have at every facility. So those are the kinds of things and decisions that I'm trying to continually to force myself to make, because sometimes it's not easy to do those things. But I think that just doing that will reap benefits longer term as well.
What's your best source for meeting new investors right now?
Coming on podcasts is helpful, and then Bigger Pockets is still just going on and talking about storage or even non-storage things that I've learned over the years is a good portion of it. And honestly, thus far, most of my partners or investors have really just been people that I've known for a long time. Either I worked with when I had a W-2 or in some other, or even when I was in real estate doing residential stuff. So just maintaining good relationships, being a person of integrity and character, and doing what you say you're going to do just goes a long way.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Probably optimism, honestly. Just being willing to, when you fall on your face, knowing that, eventually you get up and you're not going to fall on your face is hard. So, I think having a good relationship with God and having a supportive wife and optimism are three huge ingredients.
How do you like to give back?
Tithing with our church, and honestly, just helping people figure out how real estate can help them, whether that's like literally buying a house hack or just thinking bigger. I think that those two things are how we do.
Awesome. Zach, I'm grateful to have met you. Just appreciate you being willing to be transparent and talk about your path to just success in commercial real estate and being willing to pivot. Like you said, leaning into something, working hard, and not being willing to give up, even when you get knocked down. It's not if, but just when. But then also being willing to pivot, from that thought process or those limiting beliefs that you talked about. So just grateful for you sharing that. I mean, we just cannot hear that enough. It is such a hindrance to almost everyone at some point, that's trying to get into this business or any business. So grateful for your time. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Whitney. I seriously appreciate it. And I'm a big fan of the show. So Zach, ZACH at zachquick.com is my email address, or it's not a very common name. So Zach Quick on LinkedIn or Bigger Pockets, and you'll find me.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.